Welcome, everyone, to Los Libertinos podcast. I am your host, Carlos Abelard, and this is Chingazos and Fire episode number 54. Our guest today is Daniel Coffeen, who I interviewed on episode 14 last year, many interviews ago. I'll put the link in the show notes so you can check that out. Daniel has a PhD in rhetoric from Berkeley. He's an author, a philosopher, and my homie. Welcome, Daniel.
Hey. Always honored to talk to you.
So usually on these shows, I ask for the background, but since this is your second time on, anybody that wants to get a more in-depth background, we definitely talked more background in the first episode. So I encourage everyone to check out that episode. But yeah, it's been a long time since we've been able to talk like this. I know we interact a little bit on Twitter and send messages here and there, but right off the bat, I wanted to ask you, how you been feeling, man? Your most recent post, depending on how somebody reads it or depending on how you wrote it, can go both ways. If you don't mind, just for the audience, if you don't mind me reading it real quick, just so people know what's up. You wrote recently. I've always written with alarming speed. My whole way of operating with ideas and language was driven by this speed. For months, I haven't been able to write. Today, I finally understand why. I now see too many points of inflection to move that quickly. My metabolism has changed. So what's up, man?
Yeah, you know what it is? It's like, a little bit, some of the things we were talking about, offline just a moment ago. You're getting older. I'm getting older. Like there's new things are happening, right? A whole new way of operating. I think I went through a lot of my youth. I was always the fastest kid, right? From like kindergarten on, right? I was always done with my test, finish the thing, and then when I got really into philosophy, it really served me well because I could make connections super fast. And it's helped me with my clients, I helped develop their sort of narratives and internal stories and things like that because I can go very quickly. They can throw a lot of stuff at me and I can throw it together. And here's an argument. Here's a position. Here's a way of thinking about this. But these days when I sit down to write, every time I say one thing, I see all the threads, right? All the implications, all the little folds, all the qualifications. When I was moving quickly, there was an excitement and a thrill and a kind of friction and a kind of animation. But at the same time, I was skipping over some shit and I just didn't really care. I would just keep going forward, just keep moving, keep writing because it was just sort of just simply how I operated, right? There's not inherently good or bad. It was just my mode. And every time I've been trying to write in the past, I don't know, 6 months maybe, I sit down, I have like an hour or two. Normally I could turn out a 1,000-page essay in an hour. I think last night I sat for like 4 hours and I wrote, 2,200 words or something. And I'm still just beginning. I'm just like, whoa, I just see all these points of inflection. What's been kind of fun about it in this revelation, rather than thinking I'm just done thinking, what I realized is, no, I'm just thinking differently. I'm thinking slower and a little more thoroughly, a little more generously. Right? Where in the past, I might be quick to dismiss certain bourgeois habits or certain liberal habits or certain whatever kind of crap that came my way. Now I'm like, I understand the pain of living. I understand the difficulties and the challenges people face, and just trying to survive day in and day out in, if nowhere else, at least in America. And so I think it's a good thing. It's mostly neutral. It's just a change. And it just means I need to find different times. It's a very practical thing, like different, bigger blocks of window to write.
Yeah. Do you, well, you'll always have muscle memory to the speed. Are you going to have to be careful that you don't lose that?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of sort of the past couple of years really shifted some things, the beginnings of the virus. I had to be in sort of a severe lockdown. Somebody close to me was very sick, so I had to just be super careful. I'm generally pretty reclusive, but I got very, very isolated. And it shifted. It broke a lot of habits, and a lot of my speed with, let's say, dating or women and social and moving so quickly. And all of a sudden, I just had this sort of time, right? And this, I don't know, these nothing to check the speed, right? So one thing I started doing is I speak into, like, I have so many voice memos at this point. I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these voice memos where I'll just fire off these ideas. Usually it's when I'm pretty stoned and I'm like watching some TV show and I'm like, oh my God, boom. Like I have these elaborate breakdowns of silly TV shows like 30 Rock or Seinfeld or Curb Your Enthusiasm. But my argument is so complicated. It's so fantastic. So it's these, but point being, I have all these little like super quick thoughts. The next thing is to weave them together into a cogent piece, into an argument, into a lengthier piece of prose. That's the thing I don't have the speed with so much anymore.
Does that mean then that the words you choose to put on paper or to record, I like to use the word dense a lot because I don't know. I mean, I don't have a big vocabulary, but when I say that, I mean, I have a feeling when I say it. You have to choose your words. I wouldn't say carefully, but you're choosing them differently. Is the person that's going to read your writing going to know that, or is it just that you know it, and if you're saying it's good, I guess you'll see how good it becomes as you're shedding this skin and this new and moving forward, or like what do you want to get out of it? I mean, I know personally, I mean, everybody wants to be satisfied with what they write, but how are you going to feel when other people read what you got or hear?
Such a good question. Such a good question. I was just having this conversation last night with my girlfriend. I'm moving really slow in these things, right? I'm really building this argument, and I can't quite tell, right? Because is it going to seem like I'm moving too slowly and I'm building this case, right? I'm building a whole worldview with all these permutations. And am I going to lose them at some point along the line? But one of the questions in there is, do I care? So one thing that's happened is, maybe you've noticed, like, I don't tweet very much anymore. I don't blog much anymore. I don't like the state of public discourse. There's no winning. I posted a comment. I watched this Fred Armisen stand-up thing on Netflix, and there's something kind of interesting in it, and I tweeted about it. And someone comes along and tweets, "Oh, good, go support some woman abuser." And I'm like, "Oh, you can vote. Like, you can't say anything, right? I can't say anything in this world, and I just don't want to participate in it, right? I've gotten to the age where I don't feel like I belong here anymore, and I just want to run away and live on an island, literally unplugged from every device. So I can't see the idiocy of what's happening in the world and the way people, it's not even what's happening in the world, the idiocy of how people talk about what's happening in the world. And I just want to live out my days in peace, and I'll read and write on my own time. So I don't know if I care about an audience.
I guess when I asked that too, I might have not made this a little clear, and it wasn't clear, but it's like, you are writing to an audience of your for your career, right? Your possession. I mean, your profession, right? You said you write narratives and things that for you. So
that's always, to be honest, that's always going to be easy for me. That's always easy. That's always fast. That stuff is easy. Just
okay. See, I thought there was a mixing of the two worlds, and there is always something. Of course, your work, it always mixes together. Okay, so that's cool. See, like in Spanish terms, like the way I heard you say that right now, like. If someone asks me the difference between, in Spanish, we say, that's papita. Like, that's potatoes. It's easy. Yeah. Like, you was like, oh, my work? Oh, that's papita. That's easy. That's a potato taco. Well, that's easy. That's easy money. All right, fair enough. Okay, I was putting both in there. Okay.
That part's easy. It's when I'm trying to build like a worldview, trying to really write philosophy, trying to really, for instance, I'm writing this essay, so I worked on last night. So yesterday was Yom Kippur, which is like, again, I'm not religious, but I felt like I needed the day. I needed a day of like reckoning, which is really what the day is for. And so I sat down to write really concertedly for a bit, and I'm writing this essay on how can we say one experience, one event affects us more than another? What does that even mean? How do we quantify these qualitative states? Why a divorce, a death, a cup of coffee, and a meal, right? Why does one affect me more than another? What is happening in me and of me for us as a culture to say these things? We can say, oh yeah, that really affected me, right? And so I'm trying to isolate like the figures of what counts as the quantification of experience.
Mm.
Makes sense? An experience is more or less what? What am I measuring?
Can I freestyle a little bit with you?
Yeah,
So I have my forks in the road. I call them that. I call them the events that I feel change the complete direction of where I was going in life. For example, I played in a band like a lot of people do, and we were barely gonna start going like touring on the East Coast and stuff like that. And that was on the table, and then also was like, hey, this summer the family business, where my dad was going to build his first like spec home, and that was on the table. Like, hey, why don't you stay here and just learn how to build a home? And I remember that it was one of my I was early 20s, but it was one of my most adult decisions, and where I'm at now was probably one of my most important like thinking out and weighing out processes. But it was like I remember like at the time, I don't know, I looked up like what's his name? Anyway, the lead singer for what's that? Hey Breed, I like that band, and I was like, how much does he make? And they kind of gave an amount, and I was like, well, that's not too bad. I was like, we're not at the level of Hey Breed, so I'm not even close to that. And then I started doing the math for home building and real estate and stuff and all that, and I was like, for the long term benefits of what I feel are important for future family and all that stuff, I'm gonna let this band stuff go. It was fun while it lasted, but it's not gonna be anything serious than that. And I better learn how to build homes so I can make some money. And then, so I'm saying that to say that I do put weight or density on that decision. I don't know if I'm answering kind of the question or the question you're putting up, but I do, man. Like the way I just told you right now, I can tell that that story that I'll tell to my kids. I'll tell to anybody. I'm telling you that story weighs a lot, because my life could have gone hey, I'm like 40, still trying to be in a band maybe or something kind of, or I am where I am right now, which is I feel blessed and happy to be where I'm at, and it has to do with that decision. So yeah, man, I don't know. Some decisions you can quantify and weigh them looking back and looking where you're at. So I don't know, I mean, I'm just I'm pushing back. I don't know if I'm pushing back. We're just talking, man. We're just talking. Yeah.
The way we make decisions and it all. So I'm trying to talk about these experiences. Why is somebody's death affect me so much and a cup of coffee not? And it seems sort of obvious, but what's happening in me? What is it that's more right? And so I get into decision making also, because it's a similar thing. Like, how do we make decisions? They're not based on certainty. Sometimes there are things you can really measure and quantify, right? You could say, one of the examples I give is like, I ate a meal and I get food poisoning. Well, if I'm vomiting for a week and I have the chills, that's something measurable. That's more than if I have an upset stomach for a couple hours, right? There's a clear distinction between those things. But what happens when I say this movie was really intense, right? And really affected me, and this other one didn't, right? What is it for something to be intense? What's happening in me, right? It's not my body. You look at me from the outside, nothing's changed. You can measure every aspect of my body, nothing's changed, right? My blood pressure, every possible factor you can measure, and nothing's different. Yet I'm more affected by something. So to me, that means that it's going to sound obvious, but that the quantifiable body, the material body, is not the only thing we're made of, right? So that means there's other things that constitute us, right? So I'm trying to lead people, I'm trying to build this argument. I'm leading people down this sort of complicated argument, right? To just say, yeah, we're not just physical. But then if I'm not just physical, what is this other thing? And in what ways is it spatial? In what way does it have physical extension? In what way can I measure and say it's more, it's bigger, it's greater, right? So, one thing is of course, longevity of time. So, example I give in the thing I'm working on is I watch, years and years ago, I see David Lynch's film Mulholland Drive. Movie, it just affected me a lot. Right? I thought about it. I see the images in my head.
What is it called again? What is it called again?
Mulholland Drive.
Okay, I'll look it up. I've never seen it, but I'll look it up. I'll check it out.
Very intense movie, right? But then there's an episode of Friends, right? Then I watched this movie the other night with my sweetie called The Witch. She really wanted me to see this movie, which I don't like horror movies. The Witch is super intense, right? And yet, the minute it was done, I never thought about it again. It left no impression on me whatsoever. I watch an episode of Friends. It isn't intense, and I never think about it the moment I stopped watching it, right? What is the difference? What is something being intense? Where is it residing? Right?
Do you put out what do you think it is? I mean, I have an idea. As I'm listening to you, I have an idea, but I don't, I don't know. This is cool, man. Like, what do you think it is?
I think that the flesh and the events, the invisible, right? Ideas, moods, affect, I think they're all a kind of material that are all bouncing up against each other, and that we live in something called a plenum, Plenum, meaning the world is infinitely thick, rich. There's no such thing as nothing. There's not one spot, right? So as I reach my hand towards the screen, I'm moving through a substance. There's no nothing between these two things. And that there's all these materials. And some of these materials I can measure and weigh and see and touch. And some I can't, right? And some of those, like an idea. You can't measure an idea. You say, well, that's a big idea. What does that mean, right? And yet we use this language. Something is bigger, because we know when there's a small idea and a big idea. We know when there's a small decision and a big decision. We have these this criteria, right? But what is it that's actually bigger? And so to me, it's if I'm made of all this various stuff, including moods that come through me. Like, I wish you could see what it's like out in San Francisco right now, my neighborhood. It is like this melodramatic, gray, heavy fog. I mean, just shaking my house, But I just came from my baby mama's house, 2 miles away, completely sunny. And as you move from one zone to another, my whole mood changes. And I think everybody's mood changes. The whole way I think about the world, the whole way I hold my body. So that means the air, the atmosphere itself impinges, inflects me, has an effect on me to a certain degree. And that degree is how I am, my constitution. Like, I'm kind of a skinny guy. Now I got a bit of a drinker's belly, and I just am the way I am. I have a certain wiriness, a certain thing. And then there's the weight of the sky. And I like it. I like feeling pushed down a little bit. It helps me to feel grounded. Some people feel oppressed by it. So you have two different bodies, me and someone else's body, same conditions, but the conditions are moving down. So just as any two materials that interact according to their qualities, right? If I drop a baseball on the ground, I drop a rubber ball on the ground, I drop a glass vase on the ground, they all react differently. The ground stays the same, right? As having this effect of a certain kind of force, but that force affects different bodies differently, right? So where I'm all going with this is that if I'm this stuff that's both visible and invisible, and I'm enmeshed, I'm surrounded, I'm engulfed all the time with other things, certain things are gonna act like a tsunami, right? So, a friend clear across the country dies, and next thing you know, I'm swimming in a whole affect, because in this whole mood, I feel a weight, I feel an intensity, I feel all these things. It's simply more, it's occupying more of the invisible part of me.
Yeah, no, I understand that, man. I can go so many routes on this, because my feeling when I heard you talk right now was that, because this is the way I guess I quantified it, but it was the invisible. It was that it was basically my first podcast that I had with myself, as I had a conversation with myself about what decision I'm supposed to make in life that I think is going to be so important. It was like, so that a big reason why I enjoy these podcasts is because they're very they stimulate my mind. We're talking back and forward. There's a lot of stimulation in that, because like there's a mental we're talking. There's words different. There's a lot of stuff going on. And I guess I would think the reason that movie was intense for you, it was probably intense on the body. You felt it, right? But you weren't having a dialogue in your head about it really, other than like, hey, am I going to hang out with the honey a little bit later or something? Like, hey, it was intense, but the conversation was But with maybe other movies that you are in, you know, or anything, if the conversation is real fucking good, that you're like, hey, there's some fucking fire here, you know. So I have a limited vocabulary. So when I do, you know, we all talk to ourselves, right? You know, that's the way we you know, when I know that I'm having a moment where I interact with somebody or with myself or what, but it comes out of, you know, my head and all that. There's something satisfying to it that it makes me feel good. So it can also be bad. You know, there's times when you say some shit that you weren't supposed to say, you know, and that energy kind of went out, and maybe it wasn't meant to be, or we were having a little bit too many of these, or, you know, some of that stuff. And I would say that the invisible is the conversation, how dense of a conversation you're having with yourself, because you can only describe how you feel in the language, you know, and the words, you know, and this goes to like a lot of the stuff that you get into, you know, like, I can't even imagine all the words that you can describe from your vocabulary and that you would have in your head, man. Like what I'm saying, man, my thoughts are more simple about I'm a simple man.
There's no vocabulary, but there's also these other operations that work us over, right? So again, mood is such a peculiar one, right? Like you can talk about it in terms of how it impacts our internal conversation. Mood is this other thing, right? One of my favorite quotes in the world is from Emerson. He says, our moods don't believe in each other, right? And we know this, right? When you feel really good.
Say it again. That was cool. Say it again.
Moods do not believe in each other.
That's cool. Okay.
Right? And so like, they're so all encompassing, right? You know, when you get depressed and all of a sudden you're like, oh no, that's just shitty. No, I hate this movie. Oh, I don't want to eat this, right? You get in a good mood, right? You're in love, like, oh, the world sparkles, right? And that's such a weird force that occupies us, right? Mostly, I mean, the reason I was going down this whole line was trying to write this essay and having to move really slowly and trying to cover it all, rather than just trying to move really quickly into a conversation about quantifying qualities, which is something that's interested me for a long time. I'm trying to build a whole world view and all the permutations, sort of like what you were just saying. You're like, as we're talking, there's so much going on. There's the words. There's a lot of mood play, right? There's the thought of a future audience. The fact that something's recorded changes things undeniably, inherently, always, right? If we weren't recording this, it would have a totally different significance, right? So we have all these invisible presence, which is one reason I think today's youth are so fucking anxious, right? Because imagine being recorded and played back, 24/7 with everything. Like, oh my God, the minute someone turns a camera on me, I get self-conscious, right? So these kids, they live this world, and I think that's why they're all such a mess, you know?
Man, I never thought about that. Yeah, man, I agree with that. That the fact that everybody has a phone, and if you're in a fight or some shit, everybody, hey, world star, right? So you're like, world, you know, before, you know, some chingazos, hey, they're going to happen. There's going to be the who won, who didn't, who got the best punches, who fell first, who jumped in. Now you put it on and world star, and that tension, right? Of that you can always be, I guess, put on blast, or for good or bad. It doesn't, it could be good or bad. You did a good deed, you didn't know, or maybe you did the good deed because you did know you might be recorded. Yeah, all of that tension is real, and I never thought about it. I thought that way. I mean, can you kind of speak more to that? I mean, like, is it from experience or what you've seen, like what that's interesting. I never heard that. I never thought.
Yeah, I wrote a piece about this but many years ago, right? That the web, in a way, has become not in a way, it actually is a always on read-write, recording and playback cinema. Everything's cinematic, right? Every aspect of our lives, not just the incident that someone films on the street, but the fact that I'm being tracked everywhere I go. It's being inscribed somewhere. My friends can see where I am. I know some young people who they leave their phone on, find my phone for their friends, so they can always know where each other are, right? That's a kind of camera filming it, right? There's no real solitude, right? You're always somehow making an impression into the social world, and it's being recorded, right? It's being broadcast, right? And that is what it is. That's what social media has become, for better or worse. It's not a critique. It's just a reality that then shifts the very makeup of the everyday life, because now it's no longer just you and I talking, right?
Hey, what's up, everyone? Just wanted to tell you about our sponsor. It is Paloma Verde CBD from palomaverdecbd.com. It's a small business that my wife and I own, and we want to tell you about some new products that we have. Well, especially one. Uh, Check it out. These little homies right here. 5 milligrams of Delta 9 in each one. Um, the story behind some of these was that when we were first trying them out from our supplier, I took two of them, and I remember telling my wife, you know, I like to drink, right? If you're watching this episode, you see I have a little glass of tequila with me there, and we're gonna watch our late night movies, is where we usually do our hangouts, and I was like, you know what? I don't want to drink. I'm kind of feeling these gummies coming up a little bit, and yeah, no, these things get you high. Okay, so get yourself some of these for sure. And then that's funny. And then when we had them, we were just going at a party, right? My wife's party about a month ago. Everybody that wanted some got some. And usually these parties are, you know, as a host of a party, we always like to party. You always got to make sure who has drinks. Everybody's having fun. You know, you're hosting. You know. And on this one, it was different. Where some friends came in later on, and they're like, "Why is the party all kind of mellow?" And we told them, we gave everybody samples of our new Delta 9 5 milligram gummies, and everybody was mellow, man. It was a trip. I remember just everybody was playing pool, listening to the music kind of low. Everybody was getting, it was cool. So get these 5 milligram THC gummies at palomaverdecbd.com. Use the promo code Chingasos, CHINGASOS, for 20% off of your order, and support the show and small business. Thank you. Yeah, can I? Oh, let me see. I had an idea right now. Not an idea, but it was just like, uh, again, just a little. Well, wouldn't, like I was speaking earlier about back in the day, the fights would have happened and everybody would have had their rumors or their, but that was a different type of medium of how the information spread of an event. So the tensions might have always been there, but they're definitely not as intense as they are now. And yeah, that's what I think for sure. Like you said, is what is new to the human biological species, right? I mean, you're tense. You're, who's looking and all that. And we did lose a lot of, yes, it has intensified because, man, and you're talking about the theater stuff, man. You don't mind me freestyling a little bit, right? About some personal stuff. It's kind of cool. Okay. So like, my wife, when we were dating, she always had these good lines, right? All these good lines, and until I started to get to know her. Well, she always did in the beginning, right? I was like, oh, that's cool. That's cool. As I later started knowing or finding out, as you know, you start dating, hanging out with the family, is that, you know, they were a family that would watch a lot of movies together. So it turns out that a lot of these lines, she wasn't stealing them. She would just say them, and I would laugh. And real early, I found out, like, I would play around and be like, "Is that your line or a movie line?" And whatever she said, no, that's from a movie. I was like, oh, you know. So then I realized that she loved movies and all that. And when I proposed to her, my only thing was to like put her in a movie. So like when I proposed to her, it was like at my 10th year anniversary for like high school, and I had a mariachi. Like it was very like fuck it. It was like, even now thinking about it now, like what the fuck was I thinking, you know? But I know what I wanted to put her in a movie, you know, because I loved her so much, you know. I wanted her to experience a movie kind of feeling. And yeah, man, it worked out pretty good, man. It was a good thing and shit like that. But at the time, I didn't tell people or think about, hey, everybody record it. It was secret because you know how people are. People, only a couple people knew. And I didn't tell them record it and all that. Later on, there was pictures, and there's actually no more record. You know, it was a nice moment. People remember it. It was nice. But I'm thinking that if that happened today, most of them, you see them now, like they're just put, like, you know, they're but man, you know, I do a lot of that stuff, and I post a lot of stuff too, and I put it out to kind of be like to give good energy, you know, like shit's good or positive, like, you know, put it out there. So if somebody's feeling a little down or whatever, you know, like, and when I see that kind of stuff too, if I'm feeling a little down, okay, well, some stuff feels good. So, you know, I meant to, it's all positive on my end, but like for sure that is new, you know, it's
Yeah, it's again, it's not a bad thing, right? One thing I never cease to be blown away by is the mere fact that photography exists, right? The mere fact I can take a photograph, right? It just blows me away, right? And the minute we could do that, we could take a piece of the world as is and reproduce it everywhere and have it be seen by infinite eyes for all time and all eternity, right? It changes the whole temporality of things, right? There's no such thing as something being temporary really anymore, right? It has this trail, it has this always on recording. Google fucking satellite, the Google streets are taking pictures nonstop. One thing I just read was super creepy. Here in San Francisco, there's a company called Waymo that drives around. They want to be self-driving cars. They actually now, I guess you can actually order a driverless car. I think I just passed a few days ago. But I just read that the police are working with Waymo because they're recording everything. And the police have access to it to mine it for anything happening on the street. Talking about a massive invasion of the surveillance state. That's right. And so what you get is, I mean, this is an inflection of this idea of the web. This is always on recording. Is that it's the absolute congruity of dominant corporate interests like Google, Apple, Facebook, and dominant state interests, which is all, ubiquitous surveillance. We're going to watch everything you do. And that's why, basically Facebook, Adobe, all these companies are basically a wing of the NSA, right? They basically have these massive contracts with police forces and with the FBI and with the NSA, Homeland Security and all these people. And so you get this uncomfortable feeling of just constantly being watched. So in that perspective, it's awful, right? It's awful, the state of things today. But personally, I'm not built for it, right? Like, I don't want to be scrutinized all the time. I don't want to be performing all the time. I want to unplug, right? I don't want anyone recording me. And it's, again, recently I told you I don't like the state of public discourse today. So I don't participate. I'm just kind of almost off of Twitter completely, off of all social media. I just don't like the terms of it. The only thing I still like to do is I like to see people's pictures of their kids and their dogs, right? I love that shit that everyone makes fun of. To me, is the only thing I want to see.
Yeah, yes. And you know what? It's weird, man, that I try, and it is a try because we all, I don't try to set up stuff like when I'm putting my shit out there. It's try to do it as naturally as it comes. And it's weird, man, that I don't know when I see somebody like setting it up where you're actually seeing them set up the, I don't know. I kind of have like this weird feeling like a little hater, man. Like I'm like, oh, that's not. And I don't know if I'm getting old or thinking, but I shouldn't be. I shouldn't be hating on that. Let them do whatever they're doing. If they're setting it up, they're setting it up. And that was always kind of my style on a lot of things, just to kind of like, oh, you never know, you never know what's going on in there. They might be doing that setup because they invested everything on this one thing and they need money for this. Like it's endless stories of what it could be. So I'm trying to get better at that. I would rather do this like podcast and all that than do construction, obviously. But I do it with good intentions for sure. But, I guess like the company that you just talked about, I'm sure they started off with good intentions, right? But as soon as you start mixing in with like the taste of the state and all that stuff, you can go down a route that you didn't want to go. But man, I'm talking to you, man. It's good stuff. And I started like self-reflecting a little bit, but like I've done this over the podcast, and is that I say now that I used to kind of have this feeling of like, I kind of felt bad that I would be like libertarian style. Well, like saying all that like many years ago, but we would be trying to bid on government contracts, right? Like for parks, park stuff like that, local stuff, construction stuff that you can get into. And I always felt like this hypocrisy kind of. But it was at that time I was having a conversation with the philosophy of libertarianism, and not a conversation with my self-interest really. And as I get older, I'm starting to have that conversation, and it's really just, and some of these conversations go pretty easy as you get. It's like, hey, everybody's fucking doing it. Fuck it, I'm gonna do it too. What the fuck? Like, I have a family. I want this and that for them, and if that's the route I'm taking, well, fuck, I'm not. It is what it is. And I guess that comes with, like maturing and getting older. And I guess that also comes with shedding skins. Like you mentioned earlier that you're shedding skins, and we're always shedding skins. And I don't know, man. I mean, that's kind of cool. I mean, can you speak a little bit to the shedding skin of like individual level? This is like we need a shedding skin of the public discourse, I guess is what you're saying too. Like you would be more engaged if it was like different. I don't know. Just freestyle, man. Whatever.
Yeah. So it's funny. It kind of brings it all the way back, right? Like as you get older. I was saying, as I get older now, and I sit down and write, I see so many things. I got that whole thing about quantifying qualities and experiences. What that was really about was trying to show that like I see so much, just like you just in this conversation, right? There's so much happening. There's so many forces we see and don't see. And as you get older, you begin to see it all, and you begin to be more generous in many ways towards people. Like things you might have judged, like the person who sets up their live cast or whatever it is. And then you're like, who cares? Who knows? Like, whatever, power to them, whatever, right? Like people do what they got to do to get by, right? But what that does is open up. So I can't move as quickly in my writing because I feel people.
That's cool.
Feel them, and I can bash the institution of marriage, and I can say, or not, I'm just saying as an example, right? And I can say, yeah, it's cool. Like, get divorced. Yeah, that's great. Just get divorced, right? And I used to teach about this. I used to say, well, if you're getting divorced, it's the same as if you're getting married. Congratulations. You're making a big life decision. That's the congratulations, right? Like neither is inherently good. I've seen terrible marriages and great divorces. I've seen good marriages and terrible divorces. I've seen every combination, right? I personally had a great divorce, right? It's one of my things I'm proudest of is I had a good marriage and a good divorce,
I never heard that before. I've never heard that. That definitely doesn't. Well, you know what, man? I don't know. Like I was setting you off there. My parents recently got divorced, and hearing you say that might be a way to describe, but I've never heard that really because it doesn't really happen a lot where maybe, well, I'm not saying that they had a good, what I'm saying is who knows what it was, but to me it was good. And then right now that they're going into, their divorce and all that, it's as good as it could have been. It could have been, so seeing that and hearing you, I've never thought of it in that way until I heard you say that. But explain how yours went down, man. That doesn't happen, especially like with my like Latina ladies and all that shit. Hell no, man. That ain't gonna fly, man. You don't get a pass, man.
Yeah, I think it's to me once you've had a kid, I don't understand the antagonism anymore. I don't understand why you'd fight with somebody you have a kid with. You're stuck with this person forever, right? And presumably you love them, and love is eternal, right? So at some point, you're still with them, right? Like, and so, especially with the kid. So for me, it was a question of, we weren't always happy, right? But once we sort of split, things begin to get better individually for us, right? And then it's like, why keep fighting about anything, right? I can lead my life, you lead your life, and let's do it together. We still have, let's say, one household, two houses, one household, right? So. Whatever happens in one house carries over to the other house. I mean, the kid's older now; it doesn't affect so much. But when he was younger, if he needed to do something, it wasn't just his mom who said it. When it was time to come to my house, we had to do it at my house too. Like we have parent meetings, right? We still run it as a family.
Yeah, dude. No, I mean, check it out, dude. I was picturing the triangle, and at the top was the house, like you said, right? But if you flip it over, like the bottom part is your kid. Like it's the kid is what's creating that house between y'all's two, because if there wasn't a kid, things might be different, maybe because they're
walk away a little bit. Yeah, but to be honest, we probably would never have split if it weren't for the kid. But that's a whole nother thing. Okay. My point being this: I in the past I've been very flippant, right? Yeah, divorce, it's great, right? Say congratulations. Oh, okay. But then I have a friend who's going through divorce, and I don't want to be flippant with them, right? Like they can still have their pain, they can still have a difficult time, and I don't want to feel remotely judgmental of that. And so again, as you get older, as I've gotten older, I have so much more, I give people a lot more slack. I give people a lot more space. I also give them a lot less in that I control my life a lot more. I don't interact with things I don't want to interact with anymore, right? That's a luxury of age. People invite you to do something. I'm like, no, like I'm done. I don't need to go to your party. I don't need to go trick-or-treating. I don't need to do any of these things. I'm in my fucking 50s, right? Like, leave me alone. I've done all that stuff. right? And you have to respect that I'm a grown man. I'm going to make a decision that's best for me, and that might mean not going out tonight to wherever you want to go. But at the same time, so you have this sort of hyper selectivity, this hyper reclusivity, and this kind of pushing away of the world. At the same time, much more generous towards the world. And so as I go to write about things, I have much greater sympathy, and as I get older, greater empathy around certain things. And so it's made my writing much broader, deeper, wider. Like I can't just zip along, right, and say some flippant, cool thing that made sense to me. Divorce, yeah. Louis C.K. has a whole thing on divorce that someone sent me because it was very similar to a lecture I gave. It's like, when is a divorce? When does everyone say, God, I wish I didn't get divorced, right? They're always happy. It's happening. Right? Otherwise, why would they be doing it? It wouldn't make any sense.
That's funny, man. My wife and I, one of our favorite episodes, because we always play with each other, like verbally. It's funny. Is that Curb Your Enthusiasm episode where it's like where Cheryl wants David to be married for eternity, and I always joke with my wife, and it was funny because she calls me the Mexican Larry David because she says that I'm just like Larry David, but in my own ways, that he goes, oh, you guys think alike, that. So we enjoy the show, but it's funny because I'll play along and I said like, hey, so death do us part, you got me. I was like, eternity. I was like, hey, I like you. I was like, we can party, but I might be doing other things in eternity. And she never likes that conversation. But it's funny. We have fun with it. But man, I don't even know why I brought that up, man. But
it's about the complexity, getting older, all these different sort of factors, accounting for all these different factors, and just letting things go, and then seeing it's kind of beautiful, right? I mean, there's something very beautiful about it, and I begin to. I'm going back looking at philosophers I've read from their first books to the last books. And I understand so much better now their later books, right? And the kinds of things they talk about and the speed with which they talk about them. You get a different sense of life, much less quick to judge, much less flying through things, right? And just taking the time to appreciate the complexity of things.
Yeah. Hey, what's up, guys? Just wanted to let you know about a podcast that I've been jamming for about a year now. It's called The Morning After Podcast. It plays at 7:30 Central, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Justin and the crew, Matt, Dag, and Clyde are my gringo homies that man, they put a cool spin on the topics of the day. It's meant to be a light show with serious topics, but they put their gringo spin on it. And I mean, for sure, it's a little edgy. If that's not your vibe, don't check them out. But if you like to have a laugh and maybe catch me on the chats there, for sure, tune in to the Morning After Podcast. I'll put a link at the bottom. Please go hit subscribe on them, check them out, and support our sponsor. And see you there. Man, I respect that a lot, and I've also noticed because I think this is what pops up more on this is what the algorithms are telling me a little bit are when the ones that pop up the fastest of your comments are anything having to do with sports. And I've noticed, there's I don't know if there's an uptick. I don't have a real good reference other than when we first, conversated. I noticed the things you put on. But what is it about sports? And when you say, the beauty of it, we always I like to say, and the world basically says it. It doesn't, everybody takes a different view, but everybody calls football or soccer, the beautiful game. And I know why they say that. What is it currently in sports that you're seeing and that might be considered beautiful as in parallel with what you just described? That are you seeing the play of the before maybe you didn't care for it as much because you had other stuff going on, but maybe now I don't know, freestyle. What's the sports stuff?
I think I've been talking more about sports recently because I finally I splurged again on live TV. Right, I didn't have live TV. I used to always watch baseball. I was always a baseball guy, I do think, not American football, soccer. I feel funny calling it soccer to you. So, but it just sounds silly. Soccer,
Football.
football. To me, is still the most beautiful sport. It is the most beautiful sport. There's no downtime. There's so many things about it that just make it incredible. And then it's baseball to me.
Can I interrupt and say what is the? So I would say it's beautiful because of the conversations that everybody that watches soccer, like we're talking about earlier, bring it back to the conversations you have in your head while you're watching something or experiencing something. So I have my when I feel like I need to get in sync about stuff, I'll just be like, I'll make an effort to watch a soccer game so I can kind of get back to my like code or my equilibrium of stuff. So I have a conversation with myself about life and this and that. That's why some people say football is life. You start what? So what is the conversation that you're having with yourself when you're watching a baseball game? Is it the shapes of the field? Like the players, because that plays into it too. Their code is, the rules of the game or the pace of it. Like what is it? Freestyle, man, please on your baseball stuff.
One thing I've always loved about baseball, and it's a very strange sport, baseball, because I think it's the only team sport in which the defense gives the ball to the offense. In order for the game to work, you got to pitch. You have to give the ball to the other side. I'm not trying to keep it. I'm not trying to keep it only on my people. I have to give it to you. And the terms in which I have to give it to you are highly specified, right? And
like size-wise, right? Like there's a
size-wise, right? all this things working out. And so I love that the pitcher is often in the position of the trickster, right? Meaning you think you have the breaking ball, curveball, all those things, right? You think it's coming. One thing I've gotten obsessed with on Instagram are these little short, whatever they're called,
TikToks or whatever. TikToks.
Yeah, it's on Instagram, whatever the short things are called. Of people showing pitches. Right, just the breaking of a pitch, right? It's going and it's way outside, but the guy still swings at it, right? There's something just fantastic about that. And I always love the trickster. It's the rhetorician, person making an argument, right? They're trying to persuade you of something and then fool you a little bit,
That's the way you saw it. That's the way you saw it, like that, like the tricks. Okay,
that's why the pitcher's kind of trickster to me, right? And that's why I like Greg Maddux was a pitcher I just loved back in the day. It was just. He wasn't throwing it hard. Everyone now throws over 100 miles an hour, right? He barely broke 80 something miles an hour, 88 miles an hour or something like that. But he just moved around the zone, changed speeds. He just kept you off guard, right? He just wouldn't let you operate, as a batter on your own terms.
What? Yeah. Now I'm asking now we're talking sports, but I like this shit. And you sound very knowledgeable about the pitchers. What is it? What type of, when the batter gets up to bat, what is the conversation that the pitcher is trying to have with that batter off the bat? Like, is it, I know there's usually like, don't people try to throw if you have a fastball or something, you throw it first, right? To see if he can, right? Like right off the bat, you throw your whatever, but not always like, what is the conversation that they're having while,
the thing I love about baseball, it's always circumstantial too. So no batter's the same. And even if the batter's the same, the situation is different. So it's going to be different if a guy comes to the plate with less than 2 outs and a runner on third base, right? Because all he has to do is put the ball in play pretty much to drive the run home, right? So maybe he's going for the strikeout, or maybe he's going for the pop-up, or he's going for a ground ball. He's going for, the pitcher is trying to get the hitter to do certain things, not just get him out, but get him out in a particular way, depending on who's on base. Then there's the strengths of that particular batter. So again, I come back to Greg Maddux. I'm just reading about him. That's why he's on my mind. But he used to just watch like maniacally, thoroughly, every batter he'd ever faced. Wanted to see every possible bat, and he wanted to see them that day, right? So he watched them during batting practice. A lot of baseball goes on statistics, which are really generalized, right? In general, you want to pitch the fastball first or the breaking ball first, whatever it is. But Greg Maddux, I don't care about that. What's happening today? That guy's not swinging so well today, right? His timing seems off, right? So I'm going to keep his timing off, right? Or that guy's really hit the fastball well. I'm never going to throw him a fastball, right? And then, the first pitching, again, I'm just watching a pitcher break down why he never throws the fastball in the first pitch, because they're all looking for his fastball. That's what they all want to hit. So he purposely throws the breaking ball, right? And then they don't know what to do, and they feel like they need to defend. Right, the ball broke out in a way. It was called strike, and they're not sure anymore. So now they feel like they need to defend it. So then he has all these possibilities now based on that first pitch. So depending on what the first pitch is, it determines what the second pitch is. And that's all determined by the batter that day, the time in the game, right? Do we have a big lead? Don't have a big lead. Is it tight? Is it early, right? Is it the first time through rotation, right? The first time the pitcher's seeing all the batters, or the second or third? They already know the pitch at that point. They know the kinds of pitches he's throwing. It means he's going to change it the next time he faces that batter. I love all that. I love how circumstantial in particular it is. And it's like this little complicated machine, right? These players and all these different factors and rules that shift the terms on which I even approach the batter. And the batter, how he approaches the at-bat changes depending on all these circumstances.
Yeah,
right?
man. Sorry, Ben. I was going to just say that, I've never thought of it that way, that it was like you said, I think you said situational, that every single, because each play, once the plays had stopped, now what's the situation? Like, you're always asking, what's the situation? What's the situation? What's the situation? Like, at every play, what's the situation? What's the situation? What's the situation? Situation. And I could see how, even though to some people the game could seem slow, they're not watching it in situational form. They're watching it in the context of other sports that score 7 points or 6 points at a time, and touch, these big. They're not single digit points that are in the mix. And also, man, I was also listening to you talk. I didn't think about how situational it was, and I've always respected baseball. It's not my jam. I like it more in the playoffs because I feel the situations are more intense, right? Like, I've never really saw it as situational. I understood what was happening, but I didn't think of strategy. Like, I just kind of watched it all. I respected it. Then I started thinking about mine, which is that there's more free play in football. There's more. So the situations that we, as someone that likes football, they're flowy, I guess. The situations are it's very flowy and different. But that's why it gives that feeling of the beautiful game, Man, that's interesting, man.
I love watching. I only ever saw one live match, and it was Barcelona-Madrid.
Oh yeah, Clásico.
Last game of the season. So Barcelona had already won the European Cup. So I saw the move from the first half to the second half. So the first half was all starters, in the second half, because they didn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
It was a throwaway game, and I could see the difference, right? So watching the first round, the best team in Europe play, watching their movement, watching their shapes, watching how they space man, and then watching the second tier come in and they all clump like when my kid was young and they don't go to the ball. I love how spatial, architectural, soccer is, football. I hate American football. I'll watch it sometimes, but it's so boring to me. I can't even believe. I'm talking about a sport that they stop every 2 seconds, and got to reset, and nothing's happening in that downtime. In baseball, lots is happening in that downtime. After each pitch, you got to readjust the whole machine. And I guess it maybe happens in football too, but man.
Oh man, we could talk some shit about American football. I respect it. I like it a lot. Definitely a situational aspect to it. Every down, right? You can see the situation. There's more people involved. And now I'm going to start looking at my sports a little different now that I'm talking to you about it. That's going to be cool. There's a lot of that, but it's not my beef with it. And even though I wanted to say that, I'm about to say it's not my beef, but I guess it's a little bit my beef. And I say that as a shorty. I'm a short guy. Size and in soccer or football, what I like to equate is the balance between athleticism and the skill. And to me, the balance between both kind of shoots out a better game, I guess. So to me, American football, it just has a feeling of that if you're, of course, everybody's naturally born with a lot of this stuff, but it's just when the guys on the line are that big and all that, obviously, man, those guys are athletic. Those vatos are fucking huge and they run fucking fast. And obviously, the imbalance for American football is that it's athleticism over like skill. Like I know it's skill to do the skill. I mean, I get it. The highest level, I get it, but there's not a balance. So that's just my beef. It's that a short guy can't be at the highest level of that. But like in soccer, there can be. In baseball, there can be. You know, that Houston guy, Tuve. And even in baseball, because it's so skill, you can have a guy with a big old panza like Babe Ruth be one of the all greats because it was about the skill of. So that's my only thing. But yeah,
I love that. That's a great distinction. Athleticism versus skill. I love that. And it really limits the game. You're right.
It's even for like golfing. Like you can have a fat person golfing, but the skill to put a little ball in so many shots over there is very highly skilled. The most probably highly skilled game I would say is like, when I say that's skill, like I guess mental, like it really goes mental, like chess or all these vatos that are like the highest levels. Yeah, you can look however you want. That's like super skilled to be able. There's no athleticism there. Is what I'm saying. Okay, but I respect it and all that. So I just like to look for the balances of athleticism and skill to be as close as. And American football definitely has it's more heavily weighted towards like that athleticism.
Basketball too, right?
Yes, no shorties, but I respect it because you still could. There's still skill to dribbling. Like there's still a lot of skill to dribbling the ball and off play. So basketball, yeah. If you're taller, it's definitely going to help. But you can be a short. I'm not saying my size short, but you can be a shorty. You can't be a shorty in a sport that's super athleticism. Like you get killed. I mean,
you literally get killed. You're right.
You get killed. But. But I like that. I like the sports stuff, man. The sports talk stuff, man. I
know what I posted about, but a few weeks ago was all about like, I was watching the tennis, and some of the plays were so gorgeous. Some of the best tennis I've seen. The guy who ended up winning the U.S. Open, he's incredible. The Spanish kid.
Yes, I did see that because of the Serena Williams, so that hyped it up, right? So that's why I paid attention to this one. Yeah, that's right.
I grew up going to the U.S. Open. I grew up in New York, and tennis was the only sport we were allowed to talk about really in my family. It was only because my grandfather and my mother played a little bit. So like I used to go. I saw the finals with Borg McEnroe. I saw one of the most famous finals in U.S. Open history, thanks to a rich neighbor.
Right? Oh man, that's cool. That's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, so I love the tennis, and I haven't watched it in a long time. And this kid, if anyone gives a shit, is changing the game. The game is finally caught up with the technology. I stopped watching because the technology of the rackets changed so much, and the players couldn't catch up to it. They didn't have the bodies for the ball going that fast, and they're serving 130 miles an hour all the time, and they're hitting so hard, and so the game just got boring to me. There's a lot of aces and a lot of baseline winners. It's just things that weren't doing it for me. But this kid has a different kind of body, and he moves faster. He covers the court despite that speed, and I've never seen tennis played the way he played it. It changed the game. This guy's just at a level of athleticism. But I'm watching it and I'm thinking, God, that's so beautiful. But if I called somebody in the room who knew nothing about tennis, would they recognize what's beautiful? And the answer is no, 99% of the time. Sometimes a diving catch, maybe, right? There's a few plays in different sports. You can say, well, maybe just almost immediately, not objectively, but immediately, without knowing much context, I can say that's beautiful. But most things in sports, you have to have such a deep knowledge of the rules, right? I mean, baseball's so complicated. Try explaining baseball to someone in the force play and the infield fly rule, someone who's never played baseball. It is impossible, right? And so a double play. I think if you haven't played or don't appreciate baseball, a double play looks boring. When to me, it's the most beautiful thing in sport, right? It's just the most elegant, incredible thing that has to happen so quickly and efficiently for it to take place at all. The fact that it takes place regularly just makes it all the more amazing rather than less amazing to me, right? So I was thinking about the fact how much information we have to know. And I was thinking about the audience at the US Open and the ways they would cheer together at these key points in the match, meaning they all have this knowledge. Everyone in there knows what's going on. They know why this play matters, right? Why this hit matters, why this game matters. And that's a weird thing, right? And so I was thinking, okay, if you know the rules of something, and you know that knowing the rules of something allows you to find meaning in that thing, right? Then maybe if you know it once, you can find it somewhere else. So I can watch, like, I don't know a whole lot about, soccer, about, football. But I learned, I played a little as a kid, right? But I can make the game. I understand rules. I understand the movement. I understand what they're trying to do because I've watched other sports, right? And it seems to me once you know a sport, then you can also figure out the rules of something else, right? So if I know a sport and I see somebody doing heart surgery, I can put together a logic of what they're doing. I might be 100% wrong, but I at least I understand that there are rules. I understand that there's certain behaviors and certain things I'm trying to accomplish within certain constraints. And if that's true, right, then I can map that onto anything. And I can begin to understand the performance and the game, basically, let's say, of romance, of gender, of society, of culture, if you understand it all as a rule-driven thing, and that the meaning only comes from those rules, then you say, yeah, everyone's just playing a game, right? And if I don't know the rules, maybe I should learn those rules, right? As opposed to some people coming along and being like, well, there's, certain things, there's no rules, they're just natural. I'm like, no, everything's natural, including rules. Rules are natural, right? So you can rewrite the rules any way you want around gender, marriage structure, family structures, all these things. None of those are just given. They're a game. You learn to play. We know this. I mean, you've been married a while now. I'm back. I've been divorced 12 years now, so I've been dating. It's a whole world you got to navigate. And there's certain things I say and do to get certain things to happen, right?
Yeah.
You figure it out. It's a rule set. Everything's a rule set. So I was thinking that sports fans should be the most open-minded people in the world because they understand that everything's just a rule set. And that to understand the meaning of things, you have to learn that rule set. So why not learn the rule set of gender and then understand what's happening when people start using different kinds of gender? What game are they playing? What move are they making in the game? Right? As opposed to saying, no, you're breaking the rules. Go, no, understand that there are rules and understand that what is the move being made by that. I don't know. There's something that was funny to me in my own head about sports fans, ardent, Oakland Raiders fans, really understanding, the game of gender. Right. There's something just was cracking me up about that. But I was thinking and making a plea that for sports fans to be the most open-minded people. Right. Because then I have friends who don't, let's take it out of those big things like art. I have a lot of friends who dismiss sports out of hand. And it's because they don't know the rules. They don't find meaning. It's literally meaningless what's happening. And then I could take people who love a baseball game, football game, and I could take them to the museum, show them these art films, and they'd be like, I don't get it. It's meaningless. I was like, yeah, but you know sports, you know the rules. So why not learn the rules of the art world? Why not learn what this painter's up to and what it is to play the game of painting, to play the game of modern art? And then my friends who dismiss sports but love art and literature, yes, it's a game. You've learned how to find meaning. Just apply that same thing to baseball.
Yeah, that's cool, man. I started thinking about you had mentioned my wife, and I understood early that she didn't. She was definitely she came from a boxing, like San Antonio's boxing city. All the pay-per-views, everybody calls each other when there's fights, like who has the fight, whose party. That's just cultural here. And so she was definitely a boxing family. So I knew that was like a plus. I was like, oh hell yeah, we're gonna get to party pretty good. The families, but she didn't like football, and I did feel responsibility to take her essence, and if I want her to enjoy games with me and go with me to games and to be engaging with me and all that stuff, I have to show her the game in a different light. So I basically gave her all of like the what is it called, like the off field shit, like hey, this guy doesn't like this guy because this. I was basically selling the novela, the novela. And then once the novela was set and the story was set, then when she sat there and watched two people that didn't like each other, that have beef or go at it, she'd be like, I know, because they don't like each other. And it would make her, and even though I wasn't having the same engagement of like if I was talking to a sports fan or somebody that gets it, that's the level of my life. So I'm going to engage. But if I want her to, there's a responsibility for sure for the art person talking to the sports person. Like, I guess I would say, don't say learn the rules. You got to get them to want to feel engaged to learn the rules, and reel them in. Because if you do, man, if you can get like, my wife now, from where we started to what she knows now, she definitely is a higher end, a female watcher of soccer. And when she wasn't, she knows enough. She knows this stuff, and because I brought her into it, but I also showed her love, when doing it, yeah, get your sports and arts people to hang out, but like, yeah, they should definitely hear. Tell them about this podcast, man. Tell them about this podcast. Tell them to check out this conversation.
To understand that there's structures. That nothing's natural. There are structures, and that the natural is the same as the structure. It's a false split between the two. Anyway, I feel like if everyone could understand that, we wouldn't be fighting all the time. It'd be so much more relaxed.
Well, I always, I know that you're the big of the Wire fan, and I always, I forget who said it, but it's pretty simple words, like it's all in the game.
That's a refrain of the whole show.
Yeah, it's all in the game. It's all, and I remember after watching, that was an impactful series that was a series that my wife and I watched together. And every once in a while, when we want to kind of, get back to our roots, we'll watch series that we watched together as we were, dating and all that, just to kind of, but that, it's all in the game. I was having a conversation recently. I know you know this person, AJ Van Slyke, because he was a professional baseball player, and I had him on recently as I'm trying to kind of reach out again to the people I interviewed once, because they're part of my podcast venture, a thing that I got going on. So I always respect y'all for coming on. And I was telling him, because he's a sports, I was like, the rules that you were talking about and the rules of society, a lot of the rules that they come from sports, that how many of these sports have lineages to like English common law, and that the English didn't have the reason that they maybe retreated socially and like they weren't the empire. Obviously, there's a lot of probably, I mean, this is me freestyling, like military defeats, obviously, but once the people said like, hey, we already put our rule book to the world and everybody's playing it in these different games, let's just sit back and watch the show and let everybody else be the empire. We'll just get better. We'll just try to win another World Cup. I don't know. I think that there's a lot of the netting of you're talking about that we feel the weight of it. A lot of it is government, that's for sure. Rules, regulations, right? But a lot of it too is the sports that we watch. And it's important.
Just the terms. I mean, I walk out of my house. There's things I do and don't do. I had this whole freak out a few years ago. Just, I couldn't believe you walk down this one street in San Francisco. It's just lined with restaurants, and the behavior in each one's identical. Everyone's just sitting down and they're ordering their food, right? Think of all the different things that could be happening in a restaurant, right? But it's amazing how much everyone just follows the rules. It follows what you do in a restaurant and how a restaurant is supposed to behave. You know what I mean? Maybe it's obvious and maybe it's the best way. Maybe other ways are insane. But you do sometimes see it like a sports bar, right? Which, you're all sitting up high, the TVs everywhere, and a big plate of wings. It's like, well, okay, that's a different way to doing it. You think there might be more variation, right? In general, there's so many different restaurants, so many different kinds of people. Yet there's this rule set around dining and around behavior. You keep your voice kind of down. You don't talk too loudly. There's all kinds of things you do. But those rules are pervasive. They define and hedge and steer all behavior all the time.
And
right?
that's
multiple rule sets. There's different things. There's the rule as a man. There's a rule, right? I mean, a banal thing. I mean, you're walking down the street late at night and you're a guy and there's a woman in front of you. Like there's a tension there. You walked into a thing, right? And so sometimes I'll purpose across the street or, do things. So I don't want her to be nervous about me, right? There's something happening in that situation that's specific, but that's based on who I am, right? As a father, as a guy who works, as a writer, all these different things. We're in all these different rule sets, right? All the time, right? I had to tell you, like I obeyed a rule set yesterday by not working on Yom Kippur, but I felt like I had to tell you, well, I don't really ascribe to that rule set. I'm not like a serious Jew. I'm not religious. I don't believe in God. It's not my world, right? But there's an aspect of the rules. My whole point being that it's just freaking complex, right? And that we operate in so many different kinds of games at the same time.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Yeah, yes, I agree 1,000%. If anybody can bat that, that's I agree with what you're saying. It's endless games, but it doesn't mean that they're not real. And they, it's like they're, like you gotta play these games because it's life or death. It's who you eat or you don't eat.
It's your joy, it's your pleasure, it's your peace, it's your food, it's everything. Yeah, absolutely. There's times you can bend them, like in The Wire. One of the best things at the end is between Stringer and Colvin, right? Colvin tries to legalize drugs, and Stringer just wants to make it a hardcore straight business proposition. And he turns to Colvin and goes, "Hi, me and you were looking for different ways to play this game." Right. So I love the idea of these big guys trying, come in and they see the rule set and they that's not good. Let's change this rule set. Let's stop playing the same game over and over.
Yeah. What, the rule set and all that stuff, it sounds like it's like, I mean, I don't know a lot of this, but it's always talked about, and I don't know the history, the lineage of it, but it sounds like it's the culture breathing. And when the culture is breathing, from within that breathing apparatus, you can only do so much within it. But is our culture healthy right now? I know that's a kind of a basic question, but is our culture right now healthy? I know it's so many people that are in it, but does that rule set right now allow for breathing that sometimes we need to do,
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like, one thing more and more over the past few years, I was deep into crypto startup and really opened my eyes to a lot of things. And I became leaning more and more heavily to where I am more or less now, which is I had to call myself anything to be an anarchist, right? I want the state out of all my freaking business. One thing that seems obvious to me all of a sudden is that something called the United States is absurd, right? It was set up as an empire. It is an empire. And I don't mean about overseas wars. I mean, 350 million people over 4 million square miles run by one government. What are you talking about, right? And so then you get the media, and they've been doing this forever. They hype up, they talk about things. Americans think this, and people think this. What are you talking about? Right? I literally no idea what you're saying. And yet people get all worked up and then they start fighting. And I don't understand, right? Because divisiveness is an easy way to people understand and jump onto something. And so they foment this kind of divisiveness, and it sells newspapers, but I literally have no idea what they're talking about. What is an American? I've traveled all over this country. It's things are different everywhere and the same everywhere. And what I would like to see is the dissolution of the United States and the hyper-localization of government, so you can have neighborhoods. You sent me that great video. And one reason I love that video is talking about his neighborhood. And I love neighborhoods, right? Because we don't have to abstract out, right? To this, one of the things people say about, the trans community or something, what's your agenda? What's the end game? What do you mean, what's the end game? I just want to be me. There is no end game. That's a ridiculous question. Nothing bubbles up that big. Only the newspapers and our idiotic, national politicians bubble things up that high. You and I don't. There's no reason to. In a neighborhood, you know everybody. You know who's an asshole, who's good, who needs help. The asshole you learn how to operate with.
Right? I wonder. Oh, okay. Sorry, man. Go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted.
No, I'm done.
I was gonna say. I'm wondering that. And this is just about being on the front foot, man. And this is cool, man. I had all these questions that I had structure and rule, but I knew it was gonna be like this, man. So, but one of the questions that I did have, my first one was that it's important to write your own narrative, knowing that there's narrative bombs coming in to interfere with your own narrative. So. I tried to do my own shit. I didn't always. As you're younger, you kind of let more narratives kind of guide you and kind of help, because since you don't have you're not writing your own story and drama or whatever, or whatever, you're letting somebody else kind of guide you and write. So you let them. But as I get older, or I've started to try to ignore a lot of that stuff, and definitely for sure a lot of that stuff, that thinking comes from hearing you talk, and yes, it helps a lot for your inner self to block out a lot of those narratives that are coming in, and you understand them. Somebody has a job, they have an advertisement job, they have this, like, hey, it's all in the game, right? Like I said, it's all in the game, no hay pedo, there ain't no thing, man. Hey, you might get one of mine. If you're watching this podcast, you're getting one of my narratives that people know that, and I don't hide it. I'm a Texas nationalist. I want Texas to win a World Cup before the United States does. I feel that soccer and football should be more in our culture. I think it would benefit society. So I have an agenda. I have, so I'm putting people in my narrative a little bit, but it's okay. Like, nobody's forced to do anything that we don't want to. And, hearing you over the years, I've, out of, from Dad's episodes, and when I interviewed you, and when I've heard your stuff, I'm always very fascinated by the way you present your worldview. A lot of it I take in, some of it I don't. And I would feel that if you were right next to me, we can have this conversation, and right afterwards we could definitely hang out and drink some brews. Man, Daniel, I'd like to thank you for coming on the show. I really feel that you should definitely start putting some of the stuff that you're putting out there, especially the stuff that I'm liking the sports little angle. I don't know if you call it, but man, the more sports tweets you put, man, I know that you're looking at the thing differently than other people, than other sports people. So feel free to plug in anywhere people might catch you. I know you're saying you're not putting too much stuff out there, but maybe something that's coming or something. Or not, man, or where people can follow you or whatever, man.
I'm on Twitter, and I got, I'm stuck between blogging platforms, between Medium and my old blog spot, phatic.com. But yeah, I have a lot of crypto writing on Medium, which I might take down, because who wants to read about that? But yeah, I'm not plugging anything, just me,
That's good enough for me and the audience, for sure, man. Thank you for coming on, and I enjoyed this. Let's not take as long to talk again. I enjoy conversations, and thank you again. Peace.
Yeah, super fun.